In this video, I wanted to show you how to do a shoulder width adjustment for a style that has a strap. I've got the patterns here for the Sophie bodice, and here's the front and the back. This front pattern piece is the D-cup bodice, and I'm showing you this because it's got a quite dramatic swing of the strap over toward the shoulder line because of the ruching or shirring that's at the center front edge here. So what I've done is I've just traced off my pattern so that you can see what it looks like. I'm working with the size 8 here, which is my standard size. And you'll see here that I have a couple of slash lines here. So what I've done is drawn 2 slash lines. So the first one is a horizontal slash line, and it's just slightly above the front notch here at the armhole. And this is perpendicular from the grain line. So I've drawn this horizontal slash line perpendicular to my grain line. And then what I've done is drawn a vertical slash line just perpendicular from the original horizontal one. And the position that I've chosen for this vertical slash line is only dependent on what the position is of this curve. When I know that I'm going to be making an adjustment to the position of something, I always like to put my slash lines in sort of flat areas of the curve. So that's why I've chosen this area. But honestly, if you would have put it over here or over here, it doesn't really matter. We're still going to be blending in our neckline shape. But you'll see once I do this correction exactly how much more smoothly you'll be able to blend by choosing this particular position for that. So for this adjustment, I am going to do a 1/2 inch shoulder width adjustment. So what I'm going to do is just mark in that 1/2 inch away from my vertical slash line here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this strap section off and shift it over by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. Okay, so you can see here I've cut through those 2 slash lines that I created. And I've just got this extra paper around because I know I'm going to have to blend my line. So keeping this extra paper at this point is really helpful so you don't have to tape together a whole bunch of pieces later. So I've slashed through my slash lines here. And what I'm going to do is just shift this whole strap over by that 1/2 inch that I want to narrow my shoulder. Because in a strappy style, if your shoulder is hanging off the end of your shoulder on your body, chances are the neck width is also too wide. So by doing it this way, we're actually adjusting both issues at the same time. So what you're going to make sure for this is that you're actually shifting over. So you're not adding any length here. You're just shifting that whole pattern piece over by that 1/2 of an inch. And once you do that, you can tape it in place or secure it in place. Now, you're going to see the effect now of the position that I put that vertical slash line, because you can see here that it hasn't disrupted the line very much. Whereas if I had slashed it here, I would have a really big jump in the blending of that line. Now for the armhole, I definitely have to blend that line as well. But before we do that, let's do the same action to our back pattern piece. So you're going to see here, I've created the same sort of slash lines on my back. So once again, I'm just choosing a point just above the armhole notches here, and I'm drawing a horizontal line that is perpendicular from the grain line that I have here. And then I'm choosing a point to draw my vertical line. Now you're going to see how, because I don't have a kind of a flat area of this neckline curve, we're going to have to do a bit more adjustment to our neckline, which you'll see a bit. But I've also put a line that's 1/2 inch away from my vertical slash line here, which means I'm going to do the same action. I'm going to slash open that pattern, and I'm just going to shift it over by that 1/2 inch. So my whole strap is moving by that 1/2 of an inch. And then once you do that, you can secure it in place. Now it's important that you definitely make the same correction to both the front and back. Okay, so now that we've got our adjustment done, we can now blend in our shapes. Here's my front pattern piece again. So all I'm going to do is I just have this cardboard French curve sort of thing here. If you have the plastic version, it's really the same thing. I've just done this for my classes so that everyone has something to use when we are making adjustments here. So all I'm doing here is finding my new armhole shape and blending it in. And you're going to notice here that I'm actually starting with my seam line because I want to know where my seam line is before I know where my cut line is. So adjusting first for your seam line and then adding your seam allowance to that is going to give you a cleaner pattern right off the bat. So what you're going to notice, and this is just a little tip here, is when you do this blending action, most often you'll find that your new blended line will be approximately halfway between these two jog lines here. So mine's a little bit over, so I could probably afford to scoop it a little bit more, but it's not bad. It's looking like a pretty good line to begin with. So I can definitely scoop it a little bit more. So play with it until you know that you've got a really, really pretty line. Really, that's what matters because this is your armhole shape. This particular pattern has no sleeve, so you don't have to worry about a sleeve fitting into this particular armhole. And just find that new shape. So we're going to do the same thing to our back pattern piece. So I'm just going to bring that one in. And this one, the neckline and the armhole both need to be blended because you'll see for this front one, really because of the position that I chose to make my vertical slash line, my blending is very limited. You could maybe take just a little bit off just to smooth it out a bit, but this worked out really, really well. So I'm going to do the blending here of the back armhole here. So once again, if you want to give yourself a guideline to where this curve needs to meet, approximately midway between your original seam lines will probably be your about the point where you're going to blend to. And just use your curve to sort of establish something that you think is going to work. And again, working from your seam line as you go. So just blending in, and this curve that I'm using probably just needs to be shifted around a little bit to get the right shape. But ultimately you can just use your eye to get the right, even if you don't have the right curve that's going to work for you or the ruler, your eye actually knows better than you think. When you see the line, if it looks comfortable and beautiful to you, it's probably a good position. Now the next one here is the back neckline shape here. So once again, finding that approximate midpoint between those two original seam lines will give you some good direction on how to adjust your your blended seam line. Okay, so you can see here. So those are my new seam lines. So once I have that, I can then go and put in my cut line. So I'm just adding my seam allowances based on my new blended seam line. So on my patterns, I always use industrial seam allowance, meaning these are usually smaller. So at the neckline, I've got 1/4 inch or 0.6 centimeters. And at the armhole will also be 1/4 inch or 0.6 centimeters, simply because this seam allowance is so much easier to turn because this particular Sophie bodice is a clean finished bodice, meaning it is cleanly finished at the edges with lining. So that 1/4 inch seam allowance makes sewing that particular part of the garment so much easier. Other areas of my patterns are usually 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance. Again, because you just get a better finish when you use smaller seam allowances. Okay, and then I'm just going to finish off with my seam allowance for my front armhole. So the only other thing that you might be questioning about is what happens with the notches. Well, I'm going to bring in my original patterns here, and what we're going to do is use my original pattern to tell me where my notches are going to go. So all I'm going to do is rock my pattern until I'm following that seam line again. And I'm going to just put them where the original place is. And I'm going to do the same thing for my back as well. So once again, because my pattern has the cut edges on it, that's what I'm following here in this case. So just following this. And I can see here I can probably blend a little bit better here. And then just find your notches here. You want them to stay in the same place. And I'm just going to adjust this too. So I'm just showing you all this step just so that you can see that sometimes your first line isn't the perfect one. So just keep working at it until you find the right shape. And just like you saw, I used my original pattern as a guide to actually create this shape of the armhole, which is always good to use. If you've got an original shape that is working, use it to help you define the new shape. It really makes it helpful. Okay, so now we have done the shoulder width adjustment for this strappy style. So now I just want to lay this pattern on top of the old one, just so that you can see how you've changed the position of the strap. So you can see here, this is completely moved forward. Okay, and our strap width has remained the same. So hopefully you can see that there. We haven't really changed anything else about the bodice. We've only shifted this strap more toward the neck. Same goes for the back pattern piece. So laying this original one right on top, you can see we've shifted this toward the center and your shoulder width is reduced. Technically, we haven't changed anything about the shoulder slope, but you should fit it on your body again, just to make sure that the shoulder slope of this new pattern correction is actually matching your personal shoulder slope. So that's just a reminder to go one step further and make sure that your body and your pattern are aligned.
Did you enjoy this video? If you'd like to see more like this, let me know. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, message me via email at alexandra@inhousepatterns.com, or visit me on Instagram at inhousepatterns. When you comment, like, follow, and share on these platforms, you'll get more of what you love in your feed and help others to find the content too. I'll chat with you soon. Bye for now.